Welcome to Householders, a conversation about American life as Zen practice. I'm Inga Annie Wade.
And I'm Kyosaku John Mitchell, and we're lay members of the Atlanta Soto Zen Center. Well, by way of getting into this topic, it may be polite of me to mention to the listeners out there that I deactivated my Twitter account on purpose, not because of any sort of incident on the internet or anything like that, but rather because I'm starting a new job and I wanted to make sure that everything was cool there before I came back on, if, that's possible. And the Twitter account that I have been using for the last few months is a Buddhism and Zen. I mean, I'm representing our Sangha on Twitter and, this show and stuff like that. And I feel conflicted about, I feel sad about losing touch with a lot of people that feel like Sangha to me, sort of extended Sangha or like a second ring of Sangha. And they've been becoming interested in our Sangha because of the stuff that I'm sharing in our show and Sensei's Q&A on Twitter that he's been doing. And I really found some beautiful connections and learned a lot of beautiful things and got really good practice advice from a lot of people, gave some too. And, social media surprised me this time around. I'd been off for years and I came back on looking for community around the stuff that mattered the most to me at the time, which is this practice, our practice that we do. And I found it and it was beautiful. And I really built some lasting relationships. And, the reason I'm not there now is professional, and it has nothing to do with any of that stuff. And hopefully I can work it out so that I can do both. But now that I'm off, I'm allowing myself to think about some things that I might have been pushing out of my mind this whole time about sort of the inherent tension between social media and just consumption of information and being on the phone all the time and the presence of awareness required for this practice. And I would be lying if I said that participation in Twitter with all of its various behavioral compulsions that it creates didn't change my behavior in a way that doesn't feel in accordance with my practice. I was on my phone a lot because there were people there that I cared about and conversations about the Dharma that I was having that were beautiful. But, I don't really want to, I don't want to think about how much time I might have spent looking at my phone instead of being with my family. Even if it was just by choice, we were all doing whatever we were doing. I could have been reading books to my kids, but instead I was looking at Twitter. And I'm not big on mindfulness as a word for this practice, for Zen practice, and sort of the idea that you have to pay attention to one thing at a time. And it's not Zen to pay attention to multiple things or to be distracted or whatever, the practices in all of that. It has to be. But at the same time, I don't really feel like the behavior around Twitter was very healthy. And I wonder what you think about maybe not Twitter specifically, but just the phone as an object and the media that come in through it and the other places that media come in and how that relates to this practice. And if it is a conflict for you, like it is at least some of the time, if not always for me.
Yeah. I have deleted my Facebook a few years ago because I had really seen these just bad habits of like going on there and feeling bad every time I was on there because they're kind of formatted or structured in a way that, and this is no surprise to anyone anymore, that it creates addictive behavioral patterns. But also the outrage that you feel when you see certain posts, like that's a feedback loop too, because I don't know, maybe you want to say something to kind of feel a little more superior or prove that person wrong, or like, I don't know, there's all sorts of behaviors built into there that kind of like give you that addictive feeling, even whether it's good or bad. You're still addicted, you know?
Yeah.
And I also just don't feel like it's the best of people on there. Not that the people aren't good, but their best selves are not on there. It is a certain version of themselves, but they're kind of, you know, keyboard warriors or whatever, and not afraid
I
to
love that
say
term.
something that they wouldn't say in person. And, you know, then also posting articles that may or may not be real news. But even when they are real news, they're slanted in such a way that is highlighting some sort of outrageous or just things that would make you engaged with it. It doesn't matter if they have to exaggerate what it says or word it a little differently to make it sound more crazy than it actually is. And it gives us all like a very skewed view of it, especially on Facebook, because a lot of those articles aren't real. Some of them are memes and they might not be true. Most of them aren't. Anybody can make a meme. So it's just, it was not making me happy. And I think I kept it because of the events mostly. It's like,
Yeah, that's how they
well,
get
I don't
you.
really get invited to things. There were things tied to it. And I think there were even the yard sales. I'm like, man, I've gotten some really good deals on some stuff. And a few communities, like for me, my neighborhood cat forum is helpful because I have two feral cats that I take care of. And sometimes I need a trap in case they're sick or whatever. All sorts of things like that. So I had reasons for staying, but it just got so bad. It just got so toxic there that like I really just I had to leave. And I don't think I don't think Instagram has been as bad to me personally, but there's something that it does that's very interesting in my account. It's just kind of feedbacks some of my bad habits, some of my bad tendencies, or even insecurities towards myself. Like, I just have perfectionist tendencies, and a lot of times, like, I might see like a blemish on my skin or face or something and have to pick at it. And of course, Instagram knows this about me. So it posts like videos about pimple popping and blackheads like squeezing and stuff like that, like really like making me I don't even have to like click on it. Like I might just like hover over it for longer or something like that,
Yeah.
you know.
Who knows
And
how
it
they measure
knows.
these things?
It
Yeah.
knows. It might post more things about like, I don't know, like makeup and plastic surgery before and afters. I've never had plastic surgeries, but I feel like, you know, if you push someone far enough, keep pushing them to do something like that, keep giving them enough images, they'll get socialized, maybe brainwashed, I don't know, into thinking they need it. And I don't think I'm necessarily any different, because most of the time when I'm scrolling down these apps, I'm not really thinking that hard. And I'm not really, you know, to use the word, mindful of what I'm actually consuming. So I have to like put it down. And I'm extremely addicted to YouTube. And that can be it could be a feedback loop for my opinions. But that seems to be the least detrimental social media I've used so far. It's really just the amount of time I spend on it. Like, I actually kind of disagree with you, John, that I do think it's actually best to do one thing at a time. It's not always key. Like, I don't think you can always do one thing at a time. But I do think that's ideal.
I think I do too. I just didn't. All I meant was like, I don't really believe in the sort of shaming or virtue signaling about not being distracted, or like, you know, being high and mighty about like leaving your phone in a locked box somewhere, or, you know, like the people are very superior about their mindfulness this way. And I just meant like, you know, life is going to be what it's going to be. If you're distracted and doing 10 things at once because of necessity, you know, that's got to be Zen practice. But definitely, if you're doing 10 things at once and not paying attention to any of them on purpose, you're not probably doing Zen practice. Yeah.
Well, that's something that YouTube can do for me. So I will sometimes like have two devices, a tablet where I'll hook up something that will have like a workout video on it,
Hmm.
but I don't want to like pay attention to the feeling of working out cuz it's hard. So then I turn on another YouTube video on my phone and listen or watch that while I'm exercising.
Hmm.
And I personally don't think that's a good practice for me.
Hmm.
For me personally, I think that I could end up injuring myself because of the way my joints are,
Hmm.
very fragile and prone to injury. I don't need to be watching YouTube while I'm watching YouTube.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And while I'm eating, like I'm here by myself all the time. And honestly, the people on YouTube, I've formed sort of a parasocial relationship with them.
Hmm.
Some of them, I might have actually left comments on and they've responded, which is nice. But like, I don't know them. It just gives me the feeling that I have friends when I'm alone all the time. People who work from home now, you probably understand. Even if I talk to people on Zoom, that's usually about business. It's not like I'm like just chatting about like the day and how my feelings and everything. And, so it still feels a little bit lonely. And although talking to anybody is better than talking to nobody.
Hmm.
So I even business Zoom calls and stuff like that, it gives me a sense of being with people. And so does YouTube.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not actually interacting with them, we have like inside jokes. Like I know their inside jokes because I've watched their YouTube channel for so long. So, we
We're best friends. They just don't know about it.
yeah,
There may be people who feel that way about us by now.
I hope so.
Me too.
I don't think parasocial relationships is a bad thing. I think it could be. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, I think that it could be a bad thing, and especially if, if we were like kind of giving really bad advice or something like
Hmm.
that and like trying to get people to do weird things, then yeah, that wouldn't be a very good relationship to have. But I should like when I'm eating and watching videos and doing all these things at once, what I'm really doing is trying to distract myself from the fact that I feel lonely when I'm at home by myself
Hmm.
all day, all week. And I don't think that that's necessarily helpful. I think in the short term it's helpful because you don't have to feel lonely.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's helpful in the long term as to like how can I actually like work to not feel lonely, like to feel lonely first and
Yeah.
then
Nicely said.
work towards changing the situation a little bit.
Hmm.
So that's my personal experience with social media, and I would love to quit Instagram because that one I'm like I'm gonna pick at my face more if I keep doing that, if I keep looking at this
Yeah.
app. But I message friends there.
Yeah, it's hard. I quit Facebook a long time ago. Facebook meaning all Facebook properties, so like Instagram and Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of people who were in my life in a kind of ambient way for many years who I don't hear from or talk to anymore as a result of leaving. And I'm really conflicted about that as well, because there's a sense in which I feel like how important to me could those relationships have possibly been if I'm not like going out of my way to reach out to those people, which I did to a bunch of people and I'm in touch with them now. But on the other hand, it's good to be able to kind of keep up the casual level of relationship that you can with people who don't live around you and work with you, or like there are lots of people in a world where we see human beings outside and face to face, like we used to live in before a year ago. There are so many people that you have real relationships with that are on the same level of, I feel like, the casual sort of Facebook level friendship. It's just that that Facebook and its ecosystem make it possible to have that same level of relationship with people that you don't see in person. And that's good. That's a good thing. I mean, obviously it's counterbalanced by the sort of insanity of the news feed, which you've laid out a lot of the reasons that it's insane. And I one thing that I definitely used to experience when I was on Facebook that I don't really experience anymore is getting drawn into horrible fights about stupid stuff with people that I like, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just because that sort of environment pits you against each other, or instigates tense conversations around certain topics, because that's what drives engagement for Facebook. So I'm glad to be rid of that, and I haven't really looked back as far as leaving Facebook.
Me neither.
But the loneliness is real. Like I have fewer relationships than I did then.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sad trade-off to have to make. But I still feel like it's Facebook's fault that I've lost those people, because
Yeah.
if there were better tools for us to maintain relationships ambiently with people that we might not talk to directly one-on-one all the time, people would be there and we would be able to. But because the only tool available for this is so awful, it's kind of worth it to cut it off, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just talking as a user experience designer here.
Yeah.
The way Facebook's algorithm and interface are very unethically designed. And that was when I started getting into user experience design. I think that is actually when I decided for real this time that I was going to quit. Also, I just don't like Facebook as a company. I think the company ethics, I think Mark Zuckerberg's ethics are unethical. So I think that, they always teach you in school. It's like, oh, well, if you don't like something, it's the American way to boycott something. And I'm like, well, then why isn't anybody doing it?
Yeah.
So I stopped using Wells Fargo because they made so many accounts for people, and I stopped using Facebook because they were driving me crazy and being unethical. So I'm like, fine, I'll do it, but this doesn't seem to be working on like the level it should be.
Yeah. Yeah, and well, they've got the whole world, like it's probably bigger. Well, no, they bought WhatsApp, so yeah, Facebook has the entire world.
Yeah, that's true.
One
that's true.
person,
but it's not like Americans aren't on Facebook though.
Yeah, I mean I feel like there was a turning point at some point recently. I can't remember what it was. Like some news event happened and people started quitting Facebook. I feel like it was during the pandemic. I can't actually remember the story, but I do feel like I come across more people in my life who aren't on there than I did 5 to 2 years ago, when it really just felt like the entire world took place there, and being off there was not existing. I feel like there's a little bit of a tide turning, at least in my world, but it's not going anywhere anytime soon. So that sort of plays into the Buddhist problem with it, if you will, for me, that given that that's where people are, given that social media is where people are, well, there's reasons to be there and reasons not to be there.
Yes.
The world, like the ethical space in which people exist, includes that part of the world. And so like good can be done there, and community can be built there, and organizing and change can be made there. And in this Twitter world that I was in until a couple of days ago was unambiguously good. It was a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you there. I definitely felt like it was a great community, or it is a great community.
Yeah, it still is. And I'm sad not to be there. But this is the thing, is just the fact remains that it was so appealing to be with those people and to be talking about that stuff, that I, and I'm sure many others, because I know roughly how long many of these people were online all day, because I was on there with them, seeing them on there and talking to them. I chose it over the people right around me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not even talking about behavior like looking at my phone when my child is talking to me or something like that. Like that kind of unacceptable thing. Like, I don't feel like I need to elaborate on why that's not cool. I was doing that sometimes. More like at all is too much. And I was doing, I would find myself doing that once or twice and being like, oh my God, I can't believe I just did that.
Mm-hmm.
But even in times of more deliberately choosing what I'm going to do, there's a choice of like my kid is reading a book over there by herself and I could go read it with her, or I could sit over here and look at my phone by myself. And I chose the latter so often for such long stretches of time. I mean, it's a good thing she's so happy reading and playing by herself, but I was choosing this virtual space over that so much. And I don't really know why that feels like such a bad choice to me, because the thing I was doing felt like a good thing to do in
Mm-hmm.
isolation.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering whether there's maybe some sort of Buddhist value there that's coming through for me, of like the stuff physically around me is more morally important or something, or better practice of embodiment maybe has something to do
Yeah.
with it. Because that's definitely true. The embodiment part.
Yeah, the embodiment part, I think you're getting to a really important point there, because when you're on social media, it's almost like your mind went somewhere else and left your body.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it went into this two-dimensional vertical column where people's faces don't move, you
It's
know.
kind of weird.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that. It's almost like another dimension where like speech and the way the world looks and communication is all different,
Mm-hmm.
and it even doesn't even necessarily translate the same. As you don't say the same things you would in
Yeah.
person, or in the same way, and you need like little pictures to kind of supplement the fact that you can't like say things in person. I don't know, but I think when I realized this is I was reading like this BuzzFeed article, and it was actually just going over like things that people said on Twitter.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, that's like just another dimension.
Yeah.
That's not even real,
Yeah.
but it is real at the same time.
Right. In some weird way it is kind of
It's like that's not
journalism.
news,
Yeah.
but it is because that space exists. But then when you have like politicians saying stuff on that space, it then becomes news
Yeah.
because
Right.
that's, you know, he who we shall not name uh, would post stuff on there all the time, very ridiculous things that kind of had to be talked about. Sometimes they didn't, but a lot of times they did.
Yeah.
Making
Right.
whole decisions about the country over Twitter without consulting anybody else.
Yep. Yep. And that was weird. And, at almost too late of a, well, you could argue definitely too late of a point, Twitter decided that that was against its rules and banned he who shall not be named from the platform. And there hasn't really been anything in the way of follow up on that as far as what the policy is for world leaders. Are other people going to get banned for doing that kind of thing? Or was this a
Yeah.
special case or a one-time thing? Or are they going to reinstate him or what? Like the world of governing social media is kind of in a shambles after that. And that's leaving aside just the misinformation part and the conspiracy theory amplification and all of those things. Like there are serious civic problems with all of that stuff. And that was already true. I mean, at the time that I left Facebook, it was purely in terms of privacy. Like there was just
Yeah.
people's personal data was getting sucked up by all kinds of things and being sold and being exploited by the platform itself, as well as just sort of bad actors taking advantage of the platform. And that was enough for me. I was like, I don't want to be victim to that, but I also
Yeah.
don't want to encourage the people. I mean, it is kind of a boycott, like you're saying. Like I wanted to punish Facebook by removing my value from its ecosystem, but there's a social layer of it too that I feel like is more real to me, about not wanting to encourage the people I know to participate in this ecosystem and share their information and violate each other's privacy. I mean, like this is one of the trickiest things about digital privacy that I don't think makes it, even to sort of people who read and care about it in terms of their own privacy, people
Mm-hmm.
don't realize how often you violate your friends and family's privacy on social media by either
Yeah.
talking about them or, just like letting an app read your contacts. Like you may give it permission to look at your contact information, but the people in your address book didn't give it the permission at the same time to look at their contact information. And that's how so many apps work. So like I sort of felt like pulling myself out of the Facebook world would be a signal to the people in my life who are there that like I don't want to be involved in that kind of data mine, and hopefully it would disincentivize them to be there by me leaving. And it again, like it hasn't really hurt me. It hasn't really, I haven't been unable to do anything. I mean, in events, well, when you have babies, events don't suddenly don't really matter at
Yeah.
all anymore. So like that's not really been an issue, but I can, I certainly, it certainly would have been 10 years ago. And the marketplace, yeah, like there's ways that Facebook sort of makes itself necessary. And,
Hmm.
and I hope it doesn't get to a point where I have to sort of choose to participate in those and give up this, you know, this way of protecting myself.
Since the internet has become a thing, it's just become this divisive force
Yeah.
in our nation. I mean, I'm sure it happens everywhere else too, but I'm so familiar with how it has affected our country,
Mm-hmm.
and that there's always been the left and the right, but now like all you hear is like the far left and the far right,
Yeah.
and you don't really hear anything in between, even though most people are actually moderates.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a moderate, and I'm not afraid to say that because I kind of in some way instinctually feel like it's like the middle way,
Yeah.
because even if regardless of what my beliefs are, I feel like we do need to come together and discuss these things in a civil manner and use compassion and understanding to realize what the other person is saying. I mean, I'm not saying that everybody needs that platform. Maybe you don't need to like listen to Nazis or anything, but like most people are not Nazis.
Mm-hmm.
Most people have a reason for what they believe in. It could just be misinformation, which there is a lot of now. And I used to have beliefs just from growing up in the South and everything that I don't think were correct in my opinion, or maybe they just weren't the most compassionate beliefs. But people did take the time to sit down with me and actually like just educate me and tell me about my views, and it actually changed my mind. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't think we even believe that that is a possibility anymore because of social media.
Yeah, because the tools are designed in an unethical way, just like you said, that profits, literally profits, off of the amplification of the most extreme possible version of reality, whether it's political or aesthetic. Like whatever you can fit into the box, the more extreme it is, the better it does for you and for the platform. So yeah, it's pretty hard to. I mean, this is not the angle I expected on sort of what the Buddhist view of this is. I was definitely thinking more about consciousness on a moment to moment basis and what it's like to be on there. This is at least as important of a point, that there is no middle way in an environment that only incentivizes extremes. And it's not just in terms of attention and consciousness, it's in terms of behavior and speech and morality and beliefs. And it's so it's the whole path, the whole eightfold path is implicated in how this stuff works. It's not just practice. I mean, it's not just, sitting practice. It's the whole practice. It's the whole practice of being a human being.
But then there's the question, like, if the middle way isn't out there at all, then how would people ever come across it? If
Well,
we say we can't be on social media because there's no middle way, well, maybe there's also no middle way because the people who believe in the middle way won't go on it.
yeah, it's a real conundrum. And but then, we'll look at the format in which you and I are conducting this middle way medium. It's not these 30-minute conversations can't really be parsed by Facebook, like the stuff that you and I are saying to each other right now, like that's not going to become part of this machine. Even if they get a transcript of it, like it's just how is it going to be profitable for them to sort of extract the words that we're saying from this? And the way that it works, the way that this show has worked by social media as one of the ways that it's come to fruition, is that relationships, people having relationships that are genuine, that are based on, not even necessarily views or values or anything, but just sort of the day-to-day transactions of like, how's your day going? What's the weather like over there? Here's a picture of my dog. Like there's just normal everyday life stuff that is enough to build relationships on, even with people that are purely online. And when people like that, who have those kinds of connections, talk about something that matters to them, that's how things spread in a middle way, in a moderate medium way. Is that like they say, I listened to this podcast called Householders that is the antidote to all this crazy stuff on Facebook. You should check it out. And one other person listens to it because of that. And that's just people being people and talking about what matters to them, which Facebook, for better or for worse, does give people the opportunity to do, and is a valid place for that kind of interaction to happen. It's just that there's so much other stuff that people are there to do that sucks them in, and it's a shame. But the fact is, this is kind of a corollary to what you said about most people are moderates. Like, people just hanging out, being people, like things that are good. Do they don't actually like things that are extreme. When they're in an extreme environment, they become extreme. And I guess it's just our duty to, as Buddhists or as people, to remind people how nice it is to move away from the extremes. Householders is a production of the Atlanta Soto Zen Center in Atlanta, Georgia, and the Silent Thunder Order. Find us on the web ataszc.org.
Our Sangha depends on your support. You can donate by PayPal to donate at storder.org. Gasho.